control the vertigo.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Today we're covering a Twilight Zone. This is episode 20 of season 1 and it's called Elegy, or how we pronounce it, and they actually spell it slightly different in the UK, is eulogy. A eulogy or elegy is sometimes a speech at someone's funeral, but the actual definitions are a sort of lamentation poem about the dead or someone who has died. That's the general term. It first aired on February 19th, 1960 on CBS, and it starts with 3 astronauts lost in space. It says they're 655 million miles from Earth, which is not that far, honestly. So I think it should have been trillions or something, I don't know, or billions, but certainly not millions. Anyway, they encounter an asteroid and claim to see some sort of man-made or buildings. And they're out of fuel, but they reckon. Oh, and basically, this asteroid is kind of circling 2 twin suns. But they've just about got enough fuel to land, so they're kind of desperate. They burnt up all their fuel, and they're trying to find somewhere. We find out that they've left Earth because there was like an atomic war, and they wanted to escape, or they leave sometime after that war. I'm not quite sure if this is an exploratory mission or an escape mission. Anyway, they have enough fuel, I believe, to sort of land on the planet. But when they get there, they do indeed discover Earth-like buildings. In fact, it looks very American. That's how it looks. But there's some weird stuff going on. The first creature they see is a dog, and they're sort of saying, no, this can't be Earth, that must be some sort of alien life form. Goes, that's a dog. But the dog's kind of frozen with its tail in the air, so it's a bit mysterious. And then they see other things that are frozen, and it's like, what's going on? And I actually thought when this started, it was about time running at different speeds. That's the kind of vibe I was getting from this episode. But essentially, they're looking around the town. They start to see different things. And then they encounter a character who is moving perfectly normally. An old elderly gentleman called Mr. Wickwire, who turns out is the caretaker. Now, he's kind of confused. He says, are you here for Happy Glades? And they're going, what are you talking about? And he says, well, no, this isn't a town. This is a cemetery. And they find out it was established before the atomic war, I guess, for the very rich, where they could basically, when they die, they could survive on in some sort of corporeal form, probably robots, I'm not really sure, and relive their happiest moments or their happiest times. And the astronauts are kind of perplexed by this. And some of the exploration is very interesting, and only like 1 or 2 of them give it away. There is, let's think, they kind of start looking around. The most notable one is they come across a beauty contest where there's all these beautiful girls, but a quite much more older and kind of plain looking woman is the winner. She's wearing these like wingtip glasses. She's deliberately non-glamorous, is how they've made her, but she's winning this beauty contest. Now that's a hint that this isn't just something else going on. And presumably everyone's a robot. Now, they actually were quite bold with this episode. They didn't want to use dummies, and they didn't want to use snaps. So they actually got people to just stand still. Now that doesn't really work. So to try and get around this, they actually whenever there's one of these characters who's meant to be not moving, one or more, especially sometimes there's scenes with several, it has to be said, they try and keep the camera moving so the movement is always in the frame, which hopefully hides movement of individuals. That was the plan. It doesn't quite work, but it's okay. And basically they find out that from Mr. Witwire that the people here are just reliving their best moments of their lives. Now he starts to talk to them, and he serves them some wine and toasts that they're there. He does also talk about the fact they've damaged the lawn, and someone's going to be upset. And he asks them what their greatest wish would be, and they're basically in their ship going home. That's what their greatest wishes. But then we find out they've been drugged, and he says, "You've been drinking the eternifying fluid. It won't hurt, but they're kind of dying." And we also find out Wickwire is a robot himself, and he's running the place, and does duties around the place. And it's his job to ensure everyone's at peace, and essentially leads them back to the ship and places them on the ship. So again, they're frozen. So presumably they're kind of reliving their happiest moment they can have, which is piloting their ship home, and then it ends. Now, I read the original story. They did change a few things. There wasn't a beauty contest, for example, and the original story was written by Charles Berman. So this is, I think, his third episode based on a Charles Berman story, and he was alive when this was done, and apparently he was never happy with any of the conversions of his story. He never thought it did his story justice. But you know what? It's extremely faithful. Apart from the incident with the beauty contest, I think they take one incident out, and I have to say it's a very brief, punchy story. That each scene is only a couple of lines, almost. It's that punchy. Before it gets on with it, and it kind of recreates it well. And Rod Serling was kind of happy with what he got here, how it was adapted and so on. So he was happy to go ahead with it. Some interesting other side notes. The equipment in the spaceship was reused from the original sets of Forbidden Planet. In fact, the outfits they're wearing look a lot like the Forbidden Planet outfits as well. And weirdly, you can hear some odd sound effects that kind of sound familiar. And it turns out that noise was reused in Star Trek 6 years later. So that's why it seems familiar. There's all sorts of weird characters just standing still. There's, as I say, I mentioned a dog. There's a marching band and all sorts of other things. It was an okay episode. I think it could have been told in a shorter time. I don't think it was particularly fair. It didn't feel elongated. It filled its time reasonably well. But it's a very, very short and sweet episode in that it just delivers a sort of story. Not the most memorable episode for sure, but interesting. And apparently there is another episode coming later where again time is kind of frozen. People were sort of standing still, but they use different techniques than that. What those are, I don't know. I look forward to getting to that episode so we can find out. I've got a feeling they should have used pictures or something like that, so it appears to be completely still, but we'll see. Maybe they use dummies, who knows. Interesting little one, not particularly stand out in any way, but worthwhile. Okay, so I'm going to wind up there, but before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to